Prison podcast, where we are live on the Rec Yard every Wednesday night. Hey, y'all, it is Wednesday night, and we are on the Rec Yard Women's Prison podcast. I'm Marcy Marie.
I'm Tunchi.
Tunchi, hi.
Hey.
Tunchi, I feel like it's been a long day.
It has been a long day. It's been a long week already, Marcy. I am feeling better. I hope that comes across well. I mean, finally, for the first time in almost 3 weeks, I feel like a normal person again. Well, it's normal, whatever that is for me.
Right. Well, I'm glad that you're feeling better, and I'm sure glad to be here. It's literally my favorite night of the week, and I'm happy to see everybody. Tonight, we are talking about collateral consequences of a felony conviction, like the forever punishment type thing.
Yeah.
And so we're going to be talking about some of the things that Tunchi and I have encountered in our own lives that have restricted us or how our felony convictions have restricted us. And we're going to talk about just some things that maybe we haven't faced, but we know have happened to other people from comments. And we see y'all coming in. We're so glad to see everybody. I see Carrie. I see my auntie, Angie, Diane, BF Diane is here. AIC's advocate, always on time. Thank you so much. Brianna, I see you. Welcome. Thank you. Thank y'all for hitting the like button, sharing the live, commenting, all of those good things. And if you're listening to us wherever you hear your favorite podcasts, Tunchi, has it ever occurred to you that people are like going for their morning runs listening to On the Rec Yard?
I've had one or two people tell me that long time ago, actually. So yeah, we got quite a few people that listen on Spotify and Apple Music. So they're starting their morning with us. What a joy for them.
How brave of them.
How brave of them to start their day like this.
Yes, if you are one of those folks that are listening somewhere, when you have a moment, please leave us a review on whatever platform you're watching us on, Apple Music, iHeartRadio, Spotify, all of those good things. We would really appreciate it. Debbie's here, Amy's here. Welcome in, everybody. So we're going to get into collateral consequences, the very real, it's the forever felony convictions in America are the forever punishment. But before we do that, let's do this. Let's do a weekly recap. Man, that was smooth.
That was pretty good. Man, after a year and a half, you've nailed it.
It only took 75 episodes.
Here we are. And it'll never happen again, though, either.
That's not accurate. So, Tunch, how was your week? And I know it was kind of rough. You had a long week.
When did this even happen? I was recovering the rest of the week last week. I was feeling better, and then I felt worse. But guess what? I know that I've talked a lot about how I hate to go to the doctor, but I've been to the doctor twice when I haven't felt well. So that was, and plus I have incredible insurance at Texas After Violence Project now. So I went, got what I needed, rested over the weekend. Me and a friend went to go see Lesbianage. It was a very bad, like a homemade movie back from the early 90s of these two women that were private detectives in DC trying to figure this crime out. And it was with a very bad sex scene at the end. It was so bad, it was fun. It was really great. And then the next morning, Monday morning, we had an interim hearing about the Texas Juvenile Justice Department. And I'll tell you, if folks can go watch the video on the Texas House site under broadcast, you can go back and look at that hearing. It was a long one. It was intense. And it was the agency really just trying to sidestep that horrible Department of Justice report, to say sorry for it, but things are great. And I'm going to tell you the truth, y'all. this was the first time I heard some of those legislators actually sound like that they were fed up, that they were fed up with this. Some really strong remarks that I hadn't heard
I want to
from
pause.
several.
I want to stop you real quick. Just first of all, I put the link in the chat to go back and watch that hearing. If you're watching from Facebook or YouTube, you can access that, but don't click the link now. Just wait till after the show and then go listen. And then I also want to Tunch, I want you to clarify for somebody that just might not be familiar with what an interim hearing is. Can you just break that down for us?
Yeah. And I don't know the link that you put in there. I think that's to the board meeting.
Oh, it is the board meeting. You're
But
right.
so an interim hearing is Texas has their legislative session every other year. So we'll have our session starting January 2025. But the summers in between are called the interim years. And so these are really just kind of hearings to kind of about a topic, and then they invite people to come give testimony. Sometimes there's open public comment, either verbally, written. We had a lot of good written comments submitted for this one. So it's really them to just have a time to learn things and to hear stuff that they're interested in that informs what bills they're going to write for the next session. And so I hope they really heard that TJJD, that this stuff is happening, that the DOJ reported, and the agency is just really being defiant. I don't know another word to say in terms of just how devastating the things were and how accurate those things were in that report. So sat through that Monday, and it was a long day.
What I found fascinating about that particular, well, the interim hearing and the board meeting both, is that both of those, the agency denied accountability, blamed it on short staffing, like that excuses child abuse, like, oh, I'm an overworked single mother, I can abuse my child. I mean, it's just, it does not excuse it. But then additionally, just acted like the report wasn't accurate. And so many findings in that report are directly linked back to actual video footage. Like, it's not just, hey, we interviewed a bunch of people that have been locked up. Not that that's not valid, because our stories are definitely valid. And the stories that Tunch and I share are accurate. Those things happen to us. But it wasn't that. For an agency to deny actual like video footage, actual offense reports. I mean, it wasn't just word of mouth. The report was not written on word of mouth. It literally identifies body footage camera showed this, this camera showed this in the report. And then the agency's like, I just don't know how much of this is true.
Yeah. I mean, I had told Alicia, I said, I think what's so painful and infuriating is, of course, what is happening, but then to be so hostile and to have so much, dismissive attitude towards advocates who care about these things. They could have said, "Hey, this is horrific. We are going to, if I have to pour out my blood, sweat, and tears to fix this, that is what's going to happen. Thank you, Ms. Toon, for coming and being vulnerable. I know that's really hard for you. We're going to work on that. And that maybe we can get together and figure out the things that, Ms. Castillo, thank you so much for your passion. And we really want to tackle, like, if there would have been some acknowledgement, Marcy, of the pain and the suffering that this stuff causes all of us, even if they didn't agree to certain parts of it. The fact that you look us in the face boldly and self-righteously and say, after people pour their hearts out, after the DOJ pours, how long was the investigation?
4 years. 4 years.
And to say, man, it was just the time we didn't have enough staff, but that's not accurate, and y'all need to get over the past, and that's the part that was the injury, the insult to the injury.
Right. It was insulting. Absolutely. And it was insulting um, to people that have lived that experience inside of those youth prisons, and it was insulting, frankly, to the Department of Justice.
Sure.
So I hope that it did seem like the legislators during that hearing were fed up with it. They really they said some really powerful things, and I think that one of them even said, "So how much do you think of the report is true? 10%, 20%, 70%?" Because even if it's 10%, we have a problem
We have a huge problem.
because the report is horrendous. Even if 10% of that happen, it's a
Well,
huge
yeah.
problem.
And Representative Wu said, so can you tell me what role lack of staffing played in sexual abuse and in excessive use of force? And like you said, Marcy, no parent can walk into a court of law and say, man, I've been stressed out at work and I've got health issues and this happened and, you know, I, I beat my kid all week. I've just been so stressed out. Whoa, man, you're overworked. I hear you. Well,
Let's
don't
get
do
you
it
an
again.
assistant. Let's get you more staff would help that. I'm gonna
Right.
get you an assistant. I'm gonna get grandma to come over 3 days a week.
Oh yeah,
No, it doesn't.
more people, right? And so, I mean, when there is a culture of oppression, like you have said, the problem, like Representative Talarico said, it's the model. It's the model. Putting children in prison is the problem. The prison settings breed this kind of abuse and neglect. It doesn't matter how nice Miss Carter is, or Miss Gandy is, or Scott Matthews on the board. It doesn't matter how well intentioned and nice they are as human beings. But I will say, once you become a part of that system, it's like the Agent Smith in the Matrix, right? Every time he touches another character, they morph into to the virus, right? They morph into the agent. That is what I see happening to people that are well intended, with intelligent, caring people that go into these systems to work there, to think that they're going to reform a system rooted in fundamental rot. That's what Talarico said. There is fundamental rot in this system. It is state sanctioned child abuse. It's just a lot, Marcy. And
Even the chairman of the board said, maybe if we can't handle, and this isn't the topic of our
oh,
show, so
sorry.
we are talking about collateral consequences, but this is our weekly recap. We're talking about today's show, for those of you that are just hopping on, is going to be about the forever punishment of the felony conviction. And Tunch and I are going to talk about some of the obstacles we faced in our own life and some obstacles of people that we know because of a felony conviction. But we are recapping the TJJD interim hearing at legislation, and I wanted to just quickly bring up what the chairman talked about. He said that in 2012 we had 11 youth prisons, and and this was happening. All of these same allegations, all of these same things were coming. And we said, okay, we closed 6 of those prisons, condensed it into 5 so that its staffing wouldn't be an issue, so that it was supposed to be a whole revamp, renamed everything.
Mhm.
And then now here we are with these 5 getting these same things happening. It hasn't stopped. And he said, what do we need? 1 prison? No prisons? Maybe Texas doesn't handle youth prisons. Maybe that's the answer, because we're failing, and that was just the fact. And I think that we're maybe headed towards some good legislation. I can't imagine what the agency could do to make up for that report.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, they would have to clean house big time, and there's not staffing. People, guess what? People generally don't want to work in kids' prisons. They can't keep people. They can't get people, can't keep people.
Right.
So yeah. And then I want to quickly just acknowledge, Toons, that what a badass you are, sister. And I know that you have that lived experience, and you having to face that and talk about it. You don't actively talk a lot about your time in the youth system because it was so horrendous and probably even more so more traumatic because of your age. Uh, and I know you're having to bring some of those things up, and then dealing with an agency that's not even acknowledging it. I can't imagine. So just that, all mad respect, truly.
Well, thanks. It often feels like I'm 15 years old again, and this is happening to me all over again. Yeah, it's hard, but we do it, and we just figure out ways to care for our mental health the best we can. So we do it. Now I've dug my heels in even deeper. So
Yeah. Yeah. So now we are just yeah, trying to get it out there even more about what's going on. And that's what we know how to do, is advocate and show up at these hearings and spread the word. So if you are watching this right now and you are um, appalled at the Department of Justice report of what's going on in youth prisons, or just simply appalled that Texas puts 10-year-olds in prison, 10-year-old, 10, 10, 11, 12, make sure and share that information with people. Change starts with conversations just like this. Let's get to the show. Are you ready?
yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. So we're talking about collateral consequences of the felony conviction, and how we finish our sentences, or even maybe you're still on parole, so you're having to deal with that, but you're in the free world, living your free life, trying to rebuild a life, and you just keep running into walls after walls after walls. And probably the most immediate need of someone getting out of prison is housing. And how does that look for someone with a felony conviction?
Marcy, what a great topic. I really don't know what people expect from us. I really don't. Be successful, be a law-abiding citizen, and if you do the right things, then. But by the way, we won't rent to you. You can't find anywhere to rent, and then you're going to get to the other things, obviously. But first and foremost, if you don't have a place to live, I don't know how you maintain and keep a job, right? Like it's what they call housing first. So if you don't have a stable place to live, you better hope somebody gives you a place to live, or you figure out the ways we figure out around things. Criminal thinking comes into use of, well, how do I get around this barrier? But yeah, number one, you're not
Yeah,
gonna
that's
find no place to rent.
Brittany gets out of prison and she has a job within 2 days. Then she has a better job within 2 months, more higher pay, and these are entry level positions at warehouse work. It's not career work and not her goals, but survival, right? And ready to get an apartment. And the apartments, even where her parents live and her dad works as the maintenance person, they don't allow people with felony convictions. And these are not, they're just average apartments. And we're not talking about like, oh, high-end places or
Right.
expensive places or gated communities don't allow it. No, I mean just everywhere. Like these average apartments in Oak Cliff in South Dallas don't allow. And so Brittany has to go. Luckily, her dad works there, so Brittany goes with her dad and just lays it all out. Like, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. And I need a place to live. And that's how she got her apartment. Had that not, uh, nowhere else. Because when I got out, we looked all around that same area and we could not find anywhere that would accept us. Now, what we would have had to be creative, we would have had to be creative to be able to live in our own place. And I'm just fortunate that I'm in my family's home,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how that happens. We see a lot of people on or with felony backgrounds living in like hotels, motels,
Yeah.
this type of situation, pay by the week type situation, they end up paying a lot more money a month than a rent, and for not it's a not permanent stable housing, uh, without a full kitchen even. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it's not, and if you have a family, that's really rough, and we see families living in these environments, and that is often because if you have money to live in that, you have money to pay rent. You just
Yeah.
can't find somewhere that will rent to you.
Yeah, and we talk a lot about the acknowledging the privileges that we've had in our lives, right? To be able to have a family home to go to, right? Like I got out both times. I got out after 10 years. I went to my father's house, right? Um, and was able to live there without paying rent until I got on my feet and figured out other means. Um, Having a vehicle, and quite frankly, the first time I got out, Marcy, was lawsuit money from suing TYC about the abuse, right? So I at least had that at my disposal, which, the second time getting out, much harder because I had zero, and my dad was like, you can live here and eat, but you better figure it out, right? Like, and that was super tough. And you're right, like, you can go get a job. And yes, employment is a barrier too. People don't want to hire people with criminal backgrounds, but in terms of just getting to work immediately, you can. Now it's fast food, or it's a factory job or something like that, and you can bust your ass there and move up and kind of start building some momentum. But if you don't have a stable place to live, I mean,
Right.
how do you maintain that? You can't.
Right, right, right. Angela is watching from Facebook. She says it was hard at first. She's been home 25 years. It's easier now. Hubby got a great job the second day he got out and is still working there, which is incredible. We rented, she said, for the first 6 months and then purchased a home. And we hear that a lot too. People with felony records that are able to maybe be in a family home, that buying, you don't have a problem buying a house with a
Right.
felony record. You do have a problem renting one. So just like word of advice for people with felony records that are looking to rent, you're going to want to look for private people renting, not companies, not organizations rent or companies renting. And then you just want to be just straight up, just pour your little heart on the line. Like, I'm trying to rebuild my life. I'm doing everything I can. I want to work here. I have this money. The rent's not going to be an issue. I'm going to take care of your property, all of those things, and just lay it out there. And that was my word of advice for that. And I mean, I'm still having trouble. My prison daughter's still having trouble with housing, so it definitely happens. Shaquille Oatmeal's watching from YouTube. She says she has a friend that completed 10 years on probation, and because she is convicted of a felony, she has the hardest time with housing and jobs. It's no wonder some people reoffend. And for sure, that's a factor in high recidivism rates. If we want people to stop going back to prison, that's one of the things. We have to make this housing and employment better. Now, what was your first jobs when you got out?
Well, first, I want to tell you that your advice there is spot on, right? The same way Brittany had to put it out on the line. When I I had to move out of my parents' house, and I just called that apartment complex that was privately owned, and the lady was like, "Well, what's your charges?" And I told her, and she said, "Well, I mean, you're going to have a real hard time with that burglary charge." And I finally said, "Ma'am, please, is there anybody that you know that will rent to a woman that's trying to put her life back together? I'm working 2 full-time jobs." I mean, I was almost in tears, and I just laid it down, and she goes, "Well, let me call you back." And I thought, well, she was just being nice or whatever. And she called me back about 3 hours later and said, "Well, as long as you can pass, as long as it's been over 10 years, let me talk to your parole officer." And that is how I got my apartment in East Texas. I just had to put it out there. It's just no other way. And you're absolutely right. It has to be private landlords. And I see Angelica making a good comment there. knowing that private landlords too also will charge you quite a bit. That they will. Some are nice and some are more caring, but know that we're probably going to be paying more rent than. And I've heard that from several people.
Yes. Yeah, big facts. Big facts.
My
It's the poverty tax. The yeah.
and they know that this is the option that you've got, and so some people will capitalize on that. My first job, which I got to tell you, getting out of prison after that first 10 years, I went straight to college, and then I went straight to AIDS Foundation Houston, that knew my background and knew what I did while I was in prison. So boy, I thought, well, here we go. I'm just gonna, girl, I got out this time as an adult, having to rebuild a shattered life again. And I'm on that monitor, so that really limits my ability to go job search. Girl, I was working full-time at Subway, which full-time means 30 hours, because they're not going to give you full-time hours at Subway, and then actual full-time hours at Goodwill, and both of those jobs were minimum wage. And so and I had to beg. And it was because the managers at the time were formerly incarcerated women, but they had like state jail felonies and stuff, so they weren't like as scrutinized or pressured. And they were like, girl, let me see what I can do. And my Goodwill manager kind of snuck me in there. It just happened to be that the HR woman was quitting in the next week. She said, I don't give a damn. She technically passes the background check, but they have an unspoken rule of, we really don't hire aggravated offenses, even though it's not in policy. But I got in there, and I just worked my little ass off as much as I could. But those were the only jobs I could find, especially in East Texas.
I love that you had said that they have this unspoken rule, even though it's not in policy. So if your loved one is getting out of prison, or maybe you're out of prison looking for work, and you're calling people like, are you background friendly? Oftentimes their policy is that, yes, they're background friendly. Don't let that give you like this, okay, I'm in. It doesn't really work that way, because oftentimes they have this underlying unspoken kind of thing that, oh, we're background friendly in policy, but we don't hire people with felony convictions, or we don't hire people with certain charges, or we don't hire, so there's a lot of that. And so I don't want to leave, like, as we're discussing these things, like with advice. My first job was Sonic. When I got out, I was in the halfway house actually working at Sonic. And then after that, I worked at Amazon. So it was fast food and warehouse. But as I was working there, I was building something outside of it the best that I could. How would you do that if you had to work 2 jobs to survive? Y'all, Burger King is paying $10 an hour. How are people living on that? They're not building a life on it. They're just barely surviving.
Yeah.
So
yeah, well, I love that you bring that point up, because working those 2 full-time jobs at minimum wage, that was all I was doing. I was coming, and I was working 6 days a week. I gave myself 1 day a week off, and of course, I was on that monitor, Marcy, so I really wasn't allowed to go anywhere except work. So, of course, I just poured into work as much as I could, to the point my parole officer even told me, Miss Toon, I really wish that you would quit Subway, because you're driving back and forth between Kilgore and Henderson at 11 o'clock at night, and I'm wore out from 7 in the morning till 11 in the evening. But it wasn't just that I wanted to get out, Marcy. It's because I had to have both of those pretty much full-time jobs to survive. And I remember thinking, this is life? Like, I'm getting up every day. I don't have time to do my writing. I don't have time to do some of the advocacy stuff that I wanted to do. And then the pandemic came. And of course, y'all have heard my story about, I just took it on faith. That year, that month that Goodwill kind of, sent us home. And then I was doing my writing, and then I was able to apply for other things. I didn't even have energy or time to apply for other things. And so you're absolutely right. It's not just finding a job, it's finding a job that is a livable standard of pay that you can live, right? Like you're not just surviving.
And I think that you were in survivor mode. You didn't have time or energy to try to do anything better, which is kind of similar to what we talk about being in prison, being in survivor mode and not being able to look forward. You weren't seeing anything but, am I going to eat today? Is my rent getting paid? You couldn't look beyond that, and that's when the conditions in prisons are really harsh. That's how it is in there. You cannot think about your life outside of prison, make goals, or do things to better yourself. Melissa Ramey is watching from Facebook. She said she had a job at an apartment complex and they would not rent to her because of her felony background. Eventually, they did rent to her after I pointed out that it made no sense that I had access to the master keys to everyone's apartment, but I could not live there.
God bless. Good for you, Melissa, for checking their ass. I mean, how it, when you tell us that story, it reminds me of all the people that work in maintenance at Lane Murray or Hobby, and they're going to the admin office and working on the warden's air conditioning, and then going back to their dorm with no air condition, right?
Right.
Like how hurtful that feels. So good for you.
Um, my auntie's on here. Angela, my Aunt Angie has worked in social work in one way or another her entire career. She said that she was not able to get housing vouchers for folks with felony convictions, and it broke her heart not being able to help people that genuinely needed help. So that's another good point, is a lot of resources that are, say it the right way, Tunch. A lot of, you can get like SNAP benefits, but some counties don't give you housing vouchers, some might.
Yeah.
Some, so you're not getting rental assistance programs, so you're getting paid these low wages, and then maybe you get into a house that overpays you because it's a private owner, and so they overcharge you. You're underpaid, you're getting overcharged for rent, and you're not going to get any government assistance from a lot of counties here in Texas.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I want to shout out real quickly and just to acknowledge Lauren Johnson's role in our journey to be able to access food. There was many years ago, people who had drug convictions could not access SNAP. They couldn't, Lone Star card. It was actually, that's when it was called that. So they had no access to that. And Lauren Johnson, a formerly incarcerated woman, it's just wrong, right? And she helped to overturn that and get that reinstated, where everybody could have access to. So when you get out, you get the emergency 3 months. Is it 3 months or 2?
3.
3 months of SNAP benefits, which is food, and that was helpful. Right. It would have been helpful if it had been a little bit longer. But see, I worked at fast food also because I could eat there. And especially when I lived on my own, I was eating my lunch and dinner at work to help save money,
Yeah. AIC's advocate says, depending on the felony here in Oregon, you can get housing assistance. So again, that's one of these, like, break down the felony charges. Some felonies are not as bad as others. Some deserve to have housing and some do not. I mean, and I'll just say, I listened to, gosh, her last name is Smith, and she's out of Dallas, and she was at that multi-faith conference. I can't believe I can't think of her first name right now, but she's a formerly incarcerated advocate in Dallas, Texas, and she said, we got to stop this nonviolent crimes, the violent crimes versus nonviolent crimes versus this versus that, because we was all in there together. People that were in prison, we don't care about all that because we were all in there together helping each other. And then again, just as someone that has a nonviolent crime, my crime was much more manipulative than a reaction crime. I mean, I'm just being straight up. If I would trust my family's checkbook to Tunch before I would trust it to someone that has a history of continuously doing this. And not to say I'm not trustworthy. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying there was a lot going on in here where these violent crimes, 90% of them are reaction. They're not somebody just sitting back thinking these horrific, they're not evil people. They're people that lost their shit for a
Right.
moment.
Right.
And so,
Right. Like it's a good point to, and I get you and I both get frustrated that there is the even in the criminal justice space that there is this othering of somehow, we're all different based on our charges. We're not. You remember we were at Philly and we had Donnice with us, and somebody made a comment that we were like, no, you're not welcome to this space anymore, because she was judging, not just judging, just being outright hateful, because I had called some gentlemen that had sex offenses gentlemen or whatever. That's how I talk about fellow brothers who have been incarcerated, right? Because we're all the same, right? The state hates us all equally. That's what state sanctioned violence is. It comes for us all. It comes for us all, and it doesn't matter what the offense is. So right, right. Like we said that on the inside, like folks that had violent crimes. Well, those are the ones you wanted to be housed with because, quite frankly, they just want to watch their TV, eat their burritos,
yeah.
and just live their little life in there. So we're all the same.
We're talking about collateral consequences, the forever punishment of a felony conviction, and how even after people have completed their sentence and oftentimes completed their parole or their probation, that there are still all of these barriers and walls, societal barriers up that we're up against. And so we've talked about housing, and we've talked about employment. And what's the next thing? We've talked just a little bit about government assistance programs and how that.
Right. Yeah. So we're just forever marked, like someone said, it's like having a scarlet letter, being denied what we call a social prison. Is that we're being denied access to the resources that we would need to actually stabilize our life. But Marcy, it's not just the physical
Right.
collateral damages. It's you could be hired because Texas is a fire at will state. We have somebody in our life that went on the news and was proudly stepping into her role at Linus and got fired, right? Because Texas is a fire at will state. So there's other things that could happen, and we talk about this in advocacy a lot of like, hey, you've got to understand that once you you start speaking out about this stuff and you're kind of known to be a felon now, right? Like now that's very public in a different way. You could possibly have these other collateral damages, like the place you're working right now may fire you. I have another close friend that she works in the medical field, and she's like, I want to be there. I want to be more outspoken. I am scared to death my employer's going to. I said, well, what happened with your background check? She goes, well, I technically passed it, but I was told to just be quiet about it. And it's like, well, that means you have to sacrifice your voice and a part of yourself to be able to avoid that.
Angela is watching from Facebook, Aunt Angie, and she says educational grants can be denied as well. And the Pell Grant just recently recently. It used to be denied for all felony convictions, and then it was open for felony convictions in the free world, and then it was open for felony convictions even in prison, so people getting their education while they're incarcerated. Other grants are definitely restricted. Go ahead, because you know more about it.
Well, I was going to say, some colleges will ask, and colleges more and more often are asking, have you ever been convicted of a felony? That's why I didn't go to Sam Houston and another place. I went to the University of Houston because they ask and they can use that as a question. Now, the legalities of, can they actually deny you your enrollment? But again, it goes back to, well, everything is subjective and at will. So I'm not even going to put myself through that. I'll just go somewhere that doesn't ask, But yes, that's
Yeah.
another resource that is often blocked off.
I was trying to go to that film school and excited. I mean, emotionally and mentally invested in getting there. And they were calling me every day. I'm talking to them. They, even with my FAFSA, and then they offered me scholarship to pay the rest. I'm like, well, that's still a little high. We're going to cover it. We want you here. Okay. And then when it was all said and done, and it was the actual background that came back, they knew I had felony convictions. I don't know why seeing it on paper changed it, but I have an acceptance letter from them. And then I have a, sorry, we're taking your acceptance back. And then they ghosted me, y'all. They had been calling me and texting me every day for a month, and then they just completely ghosted me. I had to get on my grandmother's phone and call the school from her phone number to get them to answer, because I wanted to see it in policy. I want to know what their policy was, why they, anyway, something better came up for me. And sometimes that's how things work out. But it was one of those things, and people kind of tease me. They, on my personal social medias, that I don't fight hard enough for things that, for personally, like I'll fight for my sisters inside, or I'll fight for other people getting out. But I didn't even want to fight it. I mean, part of me did, but I had lots of people message me, hey, we could do this, we could do that. I can help you with this. Do you need legal help? Do you want, no, it feels, I don't know, maybe humiliating a bit, even though I'm very open the whole world knows I have a felony conviction, but something.
No,
Yeah.
it feels like you don't want me here?
Yeah.
Well, fuck you. How about
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
I don't want to be here. If I'm not welcome here, I'm not going to beg you to be here.
Yeah. Yeah. Johnny Gonzalez is watching from Facebook. He said, what exactly is needed to seal his record? How long after his conviction does he have to wait? And I don't know the answers to that.
Yeah. Johnny, it depends on the state where you live. I don't know if you live in Texas. I think you do, but maybe you don't. There is a process for people with lower level convictions that you can apply for. There are some bills that would help make that an automatic process. But anyone with a felony, no, there is not. Now, that's what our work around HB 2300 last session was about. It was to give, it wouldn't make it mandatory, but it would at least create a pathway for people with felonies that after a certain amount of time from discharge, they could apply to the court to seal off their record. Which, is something that we talked about when we were in Philadelphia, is that, I mean, Marcy, what do you do in this day and age when it doesn't matter? The newspaper publications, and I say newspaper, I mean digital print, it's there, and it's there. It's there. You can't scrub the internet. I mean, unless you've got $1 billion or you're Taylor Swift's personal assistant. Nobody works harder than Tree Payne. She can scrub the internet, but what do you do even if we were to get our records? Now, of course, we're public figures now about our stuff, but if we hadn't have been, there was still things that you can't get rid of. So I don't even know how useful record sealing would be. I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, I think for maybe renters or employers that didn't Google you, you know,
Yeah.
I yeah, oh gosh, and I apologize. I was writing back. Melanie's asking me about a death row inmate here in Texas, and I want to look at it, Melanie. And I'm not familiar with his case, and that's um, just not something I've taken on. But I do want to look at it because I am interested now that you're bringing it up. So I am going to look at it, and I know you put his name in the chat earlier, so I will look. But yeah, I think if you don't have somebody that, sometimes you can get in, and then even if they look you up later or find out later, if you've really been working hard, maybe they'll let it slide. I mean, that's really I think not everybody's going to do that deep dive. So I think it would be worth it uh, to get off your record. If I could get mine off, I would do it, even as publicly. I mean, there's no denying if you Google my name, you know that I stole money,
Mhm.
took money that didn't belong to me. But yeah, I would do it. I mean, I don't
Well,
know.
and John here is saying, even when records are clean, they're still available to law enforcement in the court. That is true. And my juvenile record, even though I was transferred to the adult system, and it's another thing I think about Marcy. I'm like, Jennifer, you you idiot, because my record was sealed. Even though they transferred me, my determinant sentence, when they transferred me to TDCJ, I got out. And the first apartment I was able to get that first time, Marcy, I didn't know, right? Like I didn't know. I just filled out the application. Have you ever been convicted of a felony? Yes. And so the lady that was working at the apartment complex, it was later in the day, so it was just her in the office, and she looked at it and she goes, "You're we're not going to be able to accept, I said, why? Just dumb and naive, right? And I was like, why? She said, because we don't rent to people with felony convictions. And I was like, what? And she said, well, if you go get the application fee, let's run it. Let's run your background and just see what it says, just me and you. And so I went and got the application or whatever, and I came back and she ran it and nothing came up. She said, there's nothing here. And I was like, really? She was like, yeah. And I said, well, I was 15. And she was like, well, it's probably sealed because you were a juvenile. She goes, I'm going to rent this apartment to you. Don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody else. Don't
Mm-hmm.
tell anybody in this office. She said, my husband is in prison. And I
Wow.
would hope somebody does this to him. And there's a whole story about my parole officer almost got me kicked out of there and all that stuff. Now I was living in fear that she was going to
Yeah.
out me. But when I got in trouble in Houston, and the police came to Amy's house the first time we got into an altercation, I was like, oh my God. They were like, don't get in that car. Come here. And I was like, oh my God, give me your ID. And he looked up my ID and there was nothing there. And I was like, I knew then, I was like, oh God, my record really is sealed. But of course, a month later, I'm in jail. And the second I got in trouble as an adult, it opened up my whole record. And
Wow.
so I just think about how I would have had that sealed record had I never gotten in trouble again, and how helpful that would have been. But then, you start thinking about, well, what if, and where you are now, and
What if? And
what if it's just
yeah.
no good to do that. But I'm making use and meaning of my life now, and maybe then I wouldn't have. I'd have just become a drunk and finished college and shacked up with some woman and lived with a bunch of cats. I don't know, but the fact that we're just forever punished for the worst moments in our lives
Right.
for the rest of our life, like mercy, right? Like what is that movie where I think it's Braveheart, right, where they're executing him at the end, and everybody was like, and then they were just like,
Why are we doing
why are we
this?
doing? Like, I don't like
Yeah.
this. Like he's being very brave and mercy, and they still didn't. They ripped him apart. But
Angela, look at me cutting you off.
that's fine, because I'll go, because I watched that the other day.
Angela says, "Well, she works as a school as a teacher, something that she'd never thought she'd be able to do with her felony conviction, but was back from 85, so maybe it depends on how old it is, and that's another forever consequence that I want to talk about is going in to volunteer at your kid's school. That's now I have gotten lots of comments because last school year I did try to apply to volunteer. That's when I was home with my big kids before my crime. I was in their school all the time. People probably thought I got paid to be there. I was very active in helping their teachers with their school, all of that. And so when we got our nephews in January, I applied to help at the school. And she called me, and Brittany and I both applied, and it was actually to go on a field trip. And that's what the first reason why we applied. And they're like, no, I'm sorry. Now I've gotten lots of DMs from people that said, hey, they told me no at first. You should try to appeal it because your crime's nonviolent. You should try to appeal it. And so, but that's just another obstacle. Now, last school year, I was not in a place where, first of all, I wasn't sure that I wanted to be known as my social media persona in his elementary school in this very red town. It's a town that's not very open to, I'm already a lesbian parent up there. And so I was feeling that from the environment. So I wasn't sure, did I want to be not only, now I'm the lesbian felon parent or, so, but I'm going to appeal it. I'm going to appeal it this year. So I am working on that. So that is definitely another consequence, is volunteering or helping with your kids' school. And these are situations, a lot of comments when I talk about this on social media, a lot of folks are like, I wouldn't want that if in my school. But I mean, what do you think volunteers are doing up there with their kids? Volunteers are like running copies or passing out work, or they're not alone in the bathroom with your kid, or
Right.
or whatever you think in your mind happens. It doesn't happen. If abuse is happening at school, it's from the people that work there,
Right.
that are actually able to be alone with the kids.
Yeah.
Nobody's volunteering at a school and abusing kids. Johnny Gonzalez says lawyers do promise expungement for $3,500, and then he goes on to say, do felony convictions make us a target to fraud? And for sure.
Sure, Johnny. And again, there are some charges that are lower level that the process to get your record sealed is kind of, I don't want to say complicated, but it can be. So most people do get an attorney to do that. But if there's an attorney that's promising someone with a felony that they're going to get their records, that is a lie. The same way attorneys will promise, we're going to get you a time cut. Get out of here. Ain't nobody giving nobody no time cut.
Yeah.
If there's an attorney that's promising somebody parole, that's a lie. That's a scam. That's a fraud. That's just not true. I do want to also say, because I'm looking at Jennifer Mack, her comment here about, she was scared that she may not be able to be a counselor. And I had my ex-girlfriend, actually, she went to school to be a professional counselor, and she ran into some barriers there at the end to get her license. Social workers also have to go through this process of, applying for their license. And a lot of people that we know are formerly incarcerated want to be social workers. And licensing, now they've worked hard on it in the legislature to kind of ease those restrictions on it, because girl, for a while, almost every license you applied for, you couldn't be a convicted felon. We're talking about license to raise fish. You know what I mean? The hatchery license. I mean, that's a huge barrier. Licensing.
Yeah, exactly. Certain career paths are out for people with felony convictions, some of them just out, period, and some that you just have to navigate way around and get really creative, like we see folks do, and just go do all of this extra, for sure. And Jennifer Mack, thank you, watching from Facebook, says has her LCDC now, but is scared about the social work licensure. And we see it both. We see it go both ways. I don't know.
It just depends on you have to have all these letters of reference and all this other extra rigmarole that comes with the license. It's not impossible, but you certainly don't want to get a degree, right? It's really painful to find out you worked hard and put a lot of money into 4 years or 8 years of college, and then guess what? Well, you can't practice because you can't get a license,
right?
So
yeah. Federal security clearances, any kind of job with security clearances, you're probably out. You're probably not. Say it. What?
I was going to tell you some of those when we were with our Hog Fellowship. We visited DC. It was a cohort of policy, peer policy fellows, and they I don't know. We were nervous. Me and Maggie were nervous that we weren't going to be able to get into the U.S. Department of Justice because they have clearance. And you have to, there are some offices and agencies that will not let, you have to pass a security clearance to be able even to go to the offices. So there's that part too. Not only will federal jobs, they're probably not open to you. Damn, even visiting some of those places and departments you can't even get into.
Airbnb.
God. Do people know that? Can't rent no Airbnb?
Mm-mm.
You remember that debacle?
Yes, which is so silly because you still figure it out. We still figure it out. I don't know. Again, Airbnbs, which I've actually heard some TikTok has been talking about what not a great company they are and how there's a bunch of negative things about them and that you should go to other places.
Well, and they denied that, and then you figured out a way around it, and then it was a house full of formerly incarcerated people anyway.
Yes. Yeah, we figured it out anyway. That's exactly what. Roundabout ways. We still figure it out. What about traveling? Some countries, you can't travel to if you have a felony conviction. You can get a passport if you have a felony conviction.
That's
but
true.
Some countries
will not let you in.
Let
me tell you what you can't do with certain felonies. 2 things while they're fresh on my mind. First of all, you want to be a peer support specialist that is able to bill Medicaid. There are tiers of offenses that if you've been over 5 years, if you've been over 7, but that top tier of offenses, the big ones, never. I've had all my peer support trainings, mental health peer support training. I don't think I ever did the reentry one, but I did the others. I did all the hours and all the training, all that stuff. Miss Toon, here's the process for getting the certification. Oh, I'm at the tier that says never, bitch. Yeah. I'm literally a peer. For substance use and mental health, a lot of those folks are formerly incarcerated. Nah. I wanted to name that one. Number 2, I thought since I travel more often, hey, I'm going to get one of those TSA pre-check flight things. Woo, look at me go. I'll pay the little fee. If you have been convicted of a felony, of these certain felonies, see, that is also a no, bitch, no. And I'm like, golly. Yeah. Not being able to carry a firearm, not that I would, but here's what's interesting. When you go to the Capitol, you can bypass the search if you have a firearm. Not that now we're open carry, so you don't even have to have a license, but they would just walk straight through. Even citizens, not just legislators. So it's like, well, there's a tiny little thing, but it's all kinds of stuff. It's being marked with
Yeah.
that scarlet letter everywhere you go.
Johnny Gonzalez says he could not go back into the prisons with AA or NA because of certain crimes. You can't go back to teach. Who better to teach than someone that literally came out of that? And and Britt has her certification, but again, it's the level of crime. It's
Right.
some crimes, some
If it's
not
that
so
top
much.
tier first degree aggravated offense, that is a no and a never.
We are this might be a part 2 because there are so many little things, we might need to revisit this subject at another time because there are a lot of little things that that just kick us in the butt every day.
Every
As
day.
we're living life thinking, oh, we're doing great, been out of prison, doing this good works, making right decisions, making positive decisions, helping out the community, and then just all of a sudden somebody just lassos us and brings us back to reality. So yeah, for sure. But we cannot not talk about voting.
Yes,
So
Lord Jesus.
voting for felony convictions. And Brandy Smith is a reporter out of Houston. I adore her. She's incredible. You can follow her on TikTok, Brandy, Brandi Smith. She's great. She does this video. It says you can't vote if you're a felon. Like it was just one of the many things. Like she was talking about voting, but that's wrong. That's wrong. Okay. In Texas, if you have a felony conviction, and Tunch and I are not actually running. So, but if you have a felony conviction and have completely exhausted your sentence, meaning you're not on paper, that's prison talk for not on paper. You're not on probation. You're not on parole. You're completely off. You can register to vote. My wife, Brittany, is registered to vote. She has voted since she's been home. Yes, you can. If you
Yes.
are sentenced and to deferred adjudication, even while you're on deferred adjudication in Texas, you can vote because you have not been convicted of a felony. You were sentenced. Now, if you mess that up and that changes to a conviction, you
Right.
can't. But if you are, even if you're on, so if you could be on paper for a felony on deferred adjudication and still vote. States are different. You need to look it up in your own state.
In your own state.
Mm-hmm.
And remember, we're going to tell them about in Texas, if you've been arrested but not convicted, say you're sitting in county jail, you can't bond out, you've just been arrested, you still are allowed to vote. Now, the access inside county jails to be able to do that is something that we're all fighting and working on. But as long as you are not actively on a sentence, like Marcy said, you're off paper or you haven't been convicted yet, and that's what deferred adjudication is that you haven't actually been convicted per se, you can register to vote. And it's not against the law to register anyway. It's the actual voting if you are currently on some type of supervision. So please, if you're eligible,
yeah, get your
register.
vote on. Get your vote on. Your voice matters. You pay taxes. You are a citizen. You have that right. Don't let misinformation guide you in the wrong way. Brandy even came back with, well, this is where she got the information, and it was wrong. Tunch and I have been in classes with law students and lawyers and professors, and we've been through this training. We know who can vote, I promise. But if you have a question, you can check it out for yourself. Look it up for sure. We're over the hour. Y'all, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate y'all. It is literally our favorite night of the week. Y'all are our people, and we enjoy rec time with you. We will be back same time, same place, next Wednesday night, live on the Rec Yard, 7 p.m. Central Time. Any final thoughts?
Well, I was going to say something about Taylor Swift, but I'll save it for another time.
Oh my goodness. We don't have time for that, Tunch. We will see y'all next week.
Bye.
Out with us on the Rec Yard Women's Prison